Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today, entitled Mom Demands My Deaf Employee Apologized for Ignoring Her. After that, no calls and I can't leave the floor? Okay. And after that, pulled out an Uno reverse card. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen doesn't get to watch She-Hulk on Disney+. I don't need to watch it, I've lived it. So please smash that like button. And subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Entitled Mom Demands My Deaf Employee Apologize for Ignoring Her. For reference, I've spent 15 years of my life being a restaurant general manager. I've got some crazy stories. Anyways, I was reminiscing lately and this story came up. Not even sure if this belongs here. We've got entitled Mom, we've got deaf employee. It was Mother's Day, one of the busiest days at my restaurant. Quick service, self-seating, casual dining. Entitled Mom already ordered, had her buzzer, and was waiting for a table to open. She sees another family get up and immediately runs to the dirty table to reserve it. No big deal, right? Just need to bus it. Entitled Mom sees deaf employee and begins yelling at her from behind, so deaf employee doesn't notice anything at all. Entitled Mom continues to berate and follow deaf employee. Now, I understand that there is no sign saying my employee was deaf, but I believe a normal person would realize that something was off after getting no acknowledgement at all. I noticed something going on and walked over to the already irate Entitled Mom and asked if I could help. Entitled Mom goes off about my employee ignoring her request to clean off the table and help her family sit down. I apologized to Karen and I explained that my employee didn't respond to her shouts because she's deaf and genuinely had no idea what she was trying to say to her. I signaled one of my bussers to come clear the table while I continued speaking with Karen. This is when Karen accused me of lying about my employee. She demanded to know why I would hire someone who couldn't respond to her shouts and demands. I was getting very annoyed at this. I explained that I didn't need to justify any of my hiring decisions and that I 100% stood behind my team. Entitled Mom began demanding that I fire my deaf employee. Entitled Mom said that there was no use for this employee to work in a restaurant. This had me fuming. At this point, her table had been bussed, her kids were sitting, looking quite embarrassed, and her buzzer was going off informing her that her food was ready for pickup at the counter. To me, there was no reason to continue with Karen, especially on such a busy day. I asked if she needed help picking up her food or not, and if not, I wished her a good meal and excused myself. Entitled Mom was not done with my team. She again saw my deaf employee restocking some items and decided to prove me wrong. Entitled Mom approached them and again started to berate her by using very mean language. When deaf employee turned to face Entitled Mom and realized that she was being yelled at, employee was frightened and confused. I never allow my employees to be harassed, and this was especially evil. I immediately had my expo counter pack the woman's order to go, handed it to this woman, and told her to leave. Entitled Mom called me names and told me she was going to contact corporate and have me fired. Yeah, okay, like I've never heard that before. I escorted Entitled Mom and her kids to the door and told Entitled Mom she was not welcome back in my restaurant. Side note, in case you were worried about my employee. She was crying and confused by the situation. I sat with her in my office and explained that this had nothing to do with her and she was an amazing employee, which was absolutely true. Employee worked for me for over 5 years and was the first deaf employee to be a certified trainer for her position in the company. I still keep in contact with her, and she is genuinely such a special person. The nerve of some people. You could tell Entitled Mom has never worked a service job in her life. Her parents probably spoiled her as a kid, and now she thinks she's entitled to it. I dealt with a few of those types in many of the service jobs I've had. Just don't give in to their crap, and don't respond to their spewing words with emotions. No calls and I can't leave the floor? Okay. This story harkens back to ye olden days when Blockbuster and Hollywood Video were the things to do on a family-friendly Friday, and cell phones were still something most people didn't really consider necessary, aka the 90s. I took a job at a video store near my house. It was a small, family-owned store with 3 different branches in town. The job was wonderful. I loved movies and games. It was close to my residence and school. I even got free video rentals and a discount from the sub shop next door. The video store was located in a beautiful old building from the 1920s. It had marble stairs and a really amazing cage elevator that led up to the storage and employee lounge. The job was perfect for me. The hours were flexible, the pay was decent, but the only one drawback was that my supervisor, let's call her Amanda because that was her name, seriously, forget Amanda. Amanda was on the older side and seemed to not be content with how her life had turned out. As a result, she took all of her frustrations out on anyone she could, especially those people who she worked with who happened to be younger. If you were a college student like myself, you earned a special extra helping of disdain from her. I mean, really, how dare you decide to actually have aspirations of making more than $7.50 an hour? While I'm generally fairly tolerant of people like Amanda, she really went the extra mile to annoy me as much as humanly possible. She was bitter, mean, petty, and did anything and everything she could to just be plain unpleasant. She wasn't even nice to customers. The only upside to this attitude was that she didn't let Karen customers get away with their Karenness. I might have been able to take more if she happened to be particularly knowledgeable or good at her job. She was neither and only appeared to have the job because of good old nepotism. She was the daughter-in-law of the owner. She knew nothing about movies or games or gaming systems or anything we rented or sold. When a customer had a question, she would pawn them off on another employee. When she had a problem with the computers, who did she call to fix it? Me. When there was a delivery that needed to be checked into the system, who did she call? Me. When stock needed to be dragged up to the stockroom, that's me again. Any unpleasant task that came up, she would always try to give it to me. Generally, she hid in the back watching TV or talking on the phone, which did tie up the store's landline for literally hours, or doing anything and everything she could to avoid doing her actual job. When I brought up Amanda to Ken, the owner, he simply sighed and gave me a pained look and asked me to just try to bear with it and to stay out of her way if I could. I got the distinct impression that Ken didn't much care for her either, but she was his daughter-in-law. He did try his best to try to make sure I wasn't scheduled to work with her, but at least once a week I had to work with this paragon of kindness and light. One day I was on the phone with a customer discussing the late fees on their account when Amanda wanted to make a call. This resulted in Amanda ripping me a new one in front of an entire store of people. It was on a Saturday and we were packed to the rafters. She was yelling so loudly that the woman on the phone asked me if we were being robbed and whether she should call the police. Before I could answer, Amanda yanked the phone out of my hand and slammed it into the cradle. "You are never, ever to be on that phone. You understand me?" While I was desperately aching to headbutt her, I bit my tongue, took a deep breath, counted to 10. When that didn't work, I counted to 20, then 50. Instead of telling her that I hoped rabid wolverines would get her, I simply smiled and said, "All right." This seemed to annoy her even more than if I'd gotten angry. She stormed back to the office and I took a stream of customers, all of whom asked me if I was okay, and one offered suggestions on how to get rid of her. I appreciated the suggestions, but I had plenty of my own ideas. I checked it off in my big book of voodoo curses and hoped I would have a chance to pay Amanda back for her thoughtful gesture of embarrassing me in front of half of the metropolitan area. Still, there were a few more pieces to be laid out for my malicious compliance, and Amanda wouldn't disappoint me. The next piece came, perhaps a month later. I had been at work for about 7 hours of my 9-hour shift and had only seen Amanda once, and that had been when she left the store. Considering I only had 2 hours left of my shift and hadn't yet taken a break, I really needed to go to the bathroom. I told my coworker I was heading to the restroom. This was, however, apparently not in keeping with Amanda's view for the universe. She actually began to bang and kick the bathroom door, demanding I come out. I took my time, washed my hands, adjusted my hair, and calmly walked out of the bathroom. While she began to scream, I ignored her and walked up to the front of the store and took the cart of movies to be reshelved. She grabbed the front of the cart and swiped the movies off the top. She then informed me of my questionable parentage and started calling me names. Amanda told me that under no uncertain terms was I to ever leave the floor while I was on the clock. Again, I summoned an inner calm that would have made Gandhi proud. I forced a smile and nodded. All right. While I seemed calm on the outside, I had made up my mind that I would have my chance. No matter how small, I would have my moment. That shining moment came on a lazy and blissfully quiet morning. As it was a morning, it would just be me and Amanda. Hopefully she would stay in the office and I wouldn't have to deal with her at all. When I came in, there were workmen in the back working on the elevator. One of the guys came up and told me that he needed a part and he would be back tomorrow to finish up the work. Annoying, as I would now have to take armfuls of heavy tapes up the stairs, but it wasn't the end of the world. The light of my life arrived a few hours later without a word to anyone. I stood at the front putting "Be kind, rewind" stickers on a batch of new arrivals when I noticed Amanda through the back door getting into the elevator. After the man told me that he needed a part, it didn't even occur to me that the elevator had the power on, and I had a moment of amusement at thinking that Amanda was going to have to take the hated stairs. She was, above all, lazy. However, it seemed the elevator did indeed have power and it worked. At least it worked just enough to go up half of a floor and then stop. It was just close enough to the upper floor that climbing out onto that floor was impossible, and just far enough from the lower floor that climbing out was impossible. I couldn't believe my eyes. Malicious compliance activated. I couldn't entirely see Amanda as she tried to open the door and get out, but I could hear her. The sounds of frustration increased until I heard the most beautiful sound I ever heard. Amanda. OP! A slow smile, reminiscent of the Grinch, curved my lips. I walked to the very edge of the sales floor and called out. Yes? Amanda. The elevator is stuck. Can you open the door from your side? Me. I don't know. I can't see it from here. She huffed in annoyance. Well, get over here and try to open it. I can't do that, Amanda. Why not? Me. I'm not allowed to leave the floor while I'm on the clock under any circumstances. Are you kidding me? You said it yourself. Since I value my job, I can't possibly go against orders. Call maintenance. The number should be in the office. Trying to sound as innocent and sympathetic as I could possibly manage, while also trying not to burst out laughing, I can't do that either. I'd have to leave the floor to go to the office. You think you're real funny, don't you? I don't know what you mean. Call Ken then. I know you know his number. Well, I would, but I'm not allowed to use the phone, remember? Amazingly, she stopped. There was not even one word telling me that my parents were never married. It was silent. I think for the first time she realized that she might actually be in a little trouble. She was stuck in a position entirely of her own making, with no way out of it for the foreseeable future. Amanda. OP, please, just get me out of here. I'm sorry, Amanda. I'm just following orders. All pretense and niceness was dropped as she proceeded to inform me of all of my imagined faults and those of my parents, friends, and any other relations I might have or think to have in the future. Then she sealed her fate. She yelled at me that I was fired. In truth, I really only planned on letting her stew for a few minutes, but after that, nah. Me. I'm fired? Okay, then I guess I'll head home. Oh, I should also let you know that Bill called and said he'd be in at 7 instead of 5. He has to pick up his brother from the airport. So, I guess you'll be there for a while. I hope you've got a good book or something. Amanda. What? You jerk. You think you can do this to me? When I get out of here, I'm going to get you. Me. Wow, okay, yeah, have fun with that. Have a good one. I'll leave my name tag and shirt on the front desk. Wait! Bye. Wait! Me. Don't worry, I'll lock up on my way out and I'll put up a sign so people will know we're closed. OP, wait, I didn't mean it. Come back. I walked up front, wrote out a sign that we're closed until 7 p.m. due to unforeseen circumstances. The very last thing I heard from Amanda before I opened the doors was, "But I have to go to the bathroom." Still snickering to myself, I locked the door and drove the 45 minutes out to Ken's house to let him know the shop was closed. Could I have gone the 5 minutes to my house and called? Sure I could. Did I? Nope. Ken seemed a bit surprised to see me there. Ken, I thought you were working today. Me. Oh, I was, but Amanda fired me. Ken, she's not allowed to do that. All hiring and firing goes through me. She knows that. Don't worry, I'll call her. I think maybe it's time to talk to my son about her. I can't keep her on with her acting like this. Me. I don't think she'll be able to answer the phone. Ken gave me a long, sharp look as I tried very hard not to smile. Then I gave up entirely and just smiled broadly back at him. Ken. OP? Me. Yes? What did you do? Me. I didn't do anything. I only followed her orders. Ken leaned down to me eye to eye. What happened? I gave him the full tale from her telling me that I couldn't use the phone under any circumstances to her telling me that I wasn't allowed to leave the sales floor when I was on the clock. Then I told him about her being stuck in the elevator. You didn't tell her the elevator was broken? I didn't even realize it had power. Ken just stood there looking at me gobsmacked and then started laughing. I should really go let her out. He paused for a minute and looked down at his dirty hands and clothes, then up at me. But I really shouldn't leave these flowers half planted, and then I should probably take a shower. I don't want to make that drive covered in dirt. Me. Oh, of course not. You've got a really nice car, and it would be a lot of work to get that mulch dirt out of your seats and carpet. Do you need some help with the planting? Ken nodded back at me and gave another chuckle. It took probably another hour to finish planting the flowers. Ken told me I'd be paid for the day and sent me home with assurances that I did indeed still have a job and that he would deal with Amanda. I fully enjoyed the rest of my half-day off. I did hear from Bill that when he got there, the elevator repair guy had just arrived and that Amanda ended up spending about 5 hours stuck in the elevator. After that day, I only saw her one more time. She glared daggers at me as I waved happily to her as she carried a bag of her things out to her car. Whenever I think about it, I still get a little smile on my face. Besides, I only did what she told me to. Pulled out an Uno reverse card. This happened earlier this week. Told the story to some friends at a bonfire last night, and they all agreed I should share it here. Quick background info. I work at a company that installs custom closets. Our uniform includes a blue button-up Carhartt shirt with the company logo on it. I think some of you may already be picking up on where this is going. So I'm driving home from work after a very long and tedious day, completely covered in sawdust, when I get a call from my lovely wife. She had put in a pickup order at the local Walmart, but they didn't give her our almond milk. She asked if I'd be willing to stop and let them know they shorted us and grab it. While I'm not particularly enthusiastic to add a stop on my way home, I tell her okay. I get there and head on over to the customer service desk and explain the situation. The lady working there is very sweet and tells me she'll have somebody from the pickup department swing over and take care of me. She gestures towards a nearby bench and informs me that I can have a seat while I wait. I gladly did so and promptly pulled out my phone and attempt to disassociate for a few minutes. A few minutes, maybe 5 at most, go by and a line forms up. I guess the lady at the desk stepped away for a moment. I start to hear grumbling about lazy employees and how nobody has any work ethic anymore. Wish I could be more specific on their exact phrasing, but I was trying very hard not to pay attention to anything going on around me at this point. After a few more moments, I hear a very aggressive clearing of a throat, followed by a very annoyed sounding, "Excuse me, sir. I've been waiting for help for over 10 minutes. I look up to see a woman holding an armful of clothing glaring at me. She will henceforth be referred to as Glaring Woman. Me. Well, I find that unlikely, as I haven't even been here for 10 minutes, and I got here before you. Karen. Well, maybe this would go faster if you weren't messing around on your phone. At this point, I've now connected the dots, and I realize she thinks I work here. I'm about to utter the classic words, "I don't work here," when an idea hits me. Me. You're right. Sorry for holding you up. I pull up the Walmart app on my phone and show her the almond milk. My wife and I didn't get the almond milk we ordered. We were supposed to get 2 cartons. Why are you showing me your phone? So you can grab me my almond milk. Is that not why you're here? Ew, no, I don't work here. Cute malicious grin. Well, neither do I. How about we stop bothering each other now? She looked me up and down, and I could see realization dawn on her face. She quietly walked back to the line, and I sat back down on my bench. Eventually, the desk lady came back and got the line moving, and an employee from pickup came and got me my almond milk. And that's the story. At least she didn't try to get me fired. Am I the jerk for stopping my parents from paying for my sister's IVF and telling her she can't afford to have a kid? I'm 23, male. My sister is 28, female. She's married to her husband, who's 30, for the past 6 years. My sister has been trying to have a baby for about 3 years now without success. 18 months ago, she and her husband came to my parents and asked if we'd finance an IVF treatment. My parents have some savings separate from retirement and agreed to pay for it, and I even pitched in a few $100s to show my support, even though I didn't have a lot of savings, having just started work after graduation. Unfortunately, the IVF failed. Yesterday, my sister and brother-in-law came over again for dinner. Afterwards, my sister said she wanted to try another round of IVF and asked my parents if they would pay for it again. I could tell my parents looked hesitant, but they agreed because my sister was crying. At this point, I stood up and said it's not right for her to ask again for our parents' money for something that didn't work before and may not work again. We argued a bit, and I admit that things got heated and we had a big fight. She yelled at me that it was none of my business. I told her if she can't pay for the IVF, then she needs to accept that she can't afford a kid. She told me to get out, but I refused. My parents were trying to calm us down. My mom started telling me that it's not my money, to which I replied that it's basically a gift to one kid and not the other, and that it was only fair that I be given a similar amount of money as to what they would spend on my sister. My sister started complaining that it's not a gift, it's a treatment for a medical condition, and if I'd expect payment if she had cancer and my parents paid for chemo. I told her not being able to have a kid poses no threat to her life the way that cancer would, and it's a completely disingenuous comparison. My dad finally stood up and yelled at both of us to shut up and sit down. Then he told my sister that they already paid for one, and I had a point that contributing to pay for it would be unfair. He said he's very sorry for what she's going through, but they need to accept things how they are. My sister started crying again, and her husband, who had been quiet and looking uncomfortable the whole time, took her and left. Today, my sister sent me some texts calling me a jerk for sticking my nose in her business and keeping her from having a baby. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. The way you said it was harsh, bordering on jerk territory. But your parents were about to just hand over tens of thousands of dollars that they probably need for their retirement years because your sister was crying. Your sister is only 28. There's time for her and her husband to save the money to have IVF again in a few years, or they can ask other family or friends to chip in. But you did the right thing to help safeguard your parents' retirement needs. Yes, why don't they hit up hubby's family? And since OP chipped in the first round, I feel it is his business. He contributed to essentially a business transaction that failed. He hasn't even asked his sister for that money back. I get they want a kid of their own. She wants the whole pregnancy experience, but maybe they should consider adopting. A. They did, and his parents said no. Or B. He knows they'd never say yes, so OP's parents are an easier target. It sounds like OP's dad wasn't thrilled about paying again, but maybe didn't want to say no in the moment when faced by a crying daughter and potentially upset wife. I'd be surprised if he didn't pull the plug further down the line anyway. But OP needs to work on his delivery. The way he said it was like a jerk. No, they shouldn't consider adoption. Adoption isn't a magic get out of infertility free card. Adopted kids aren't consolation prizes for the infertile. Adoption is painful and messy and expensive, and people going that route need to be in it 100%. Just go adopt needs to stop. You're the jerk. It's not your money and it's not your business. You're acting entitled by not only inserting yourself into your parents' decision, but then acting as though they owe you whatever they give her. Parents don't provide kids equally the exact same things in life. They provide them what they each need if possible. In your defense, you are only 23. Your brain is not fully formed and it shows. Your parents should be telling you to sit down and mind your own business, and if you're lucky, not decreasing the amount you may one day inherit by the amount you're pitching a fit about it. If your parents can afford it, it's their decision and theirs alone. If they chose to wait for a while and let your sister try other ways, it's up to them. You don't explain their full situation, your sister and her husband. But either way, it's still not your decision to make. I agree, you're the jerk. This was a discussion between sister and parents, and the parents' decision alone. As my parents have always taught me, just ask. The worst they can do is say no. OP. If you felt that your parents were giving money out of guilt rather than actually wanting to, would you stay out of it? I don't want the money, but making the point about it being unfair let my dad decline the guilt trip. If they actually want to give the money, they can. I don't control their finances. Except you didn't even talk to your parents to see if they were doing it out of guilt. You decided they were doing it out of guilt based off a look and decided your sister was guilt tripping simply because she was crying. Your dad took it back after you gave him a guilt trip about getting a gift of equal value. Your sister crying about an emotional subject isn't a guilt trip. You complaining you should get an equal gift is a guilt trip. You're the jerk. Your dad and mom are right. This isn't your money. It was not your business to butt in and try to answer for your parents. Your sister was asking them for their money. She wasn't asking you for your money. You completely butted in where it wasn't your place, and in possibly one of the rudest, most confrontational ways possible. If you thought your parents were being taken advantage of, there were much more tactful ways to bring it up. This is a major decision. Maybe you should think about it more. Sis, you should let them talk about this in private. IVF could fail again. Are you sure it's a good decision? Etc. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for what he said or not? Please let us know. What do your parents even need those retirement funds for? Just let her have all of it. While they're at it, why not buy her a house too? And maybe a Tesla. Car thief gets caught in the act, leaves her phone with tons of evidence. This is something that happened in my hometown. A week or two ago, someone, let's call him Joe, caught someone else, the thief, breaking into his car. Thief got so startled that when they took off, they left their belongings there, including their phone, which had no security on it. Well, because everything goes through your phone now, Joe was able to take over the thief's Facebook account and put them on blast. Joe has been posting all the screenshots of messages he finds incriminating thief in a series of crimes. Joe's posts have helped link the thief to storage unit break-ins, car thefts, catalytic converter theft, home break-ins, shoplifting, and worse. Videos of her breaking into storage units, messages about selling stolen property. There's even screenshots of search history including how to hotwire a car, easiest car to steal, etc. Edit. Joe tried to give the phone with evidence to the police, but they declined, so he took it upon himself to do their work for them. Security thinks I am his relief. I work for a pretty large security company that has a contract with the absolute biggest employer in the city. This is where I work for. I also live in a security-protected apartment complex. Plot twist, it is protected by the same company I work for. My apartment was right next to the clubhouse. This is where security parked. Some background information. The company as a whole uses tan shirts for supervisors and white shirts for the officers, but the specific contract for this employer dictated that supervisors wore white shirts and officers wore blue. I am a supervisor. To top it off, my apartment complex is only a 5-minute drive, 15-minute walk from where I work. On this particular day, I had just gotten off at 8 a.m. from a 12-hour shift and had exactly 8 hours before I had to be back at work for another 12-hour shift. I also had to deal with an employee of the company I protect trying to fistfight and punching me in the face just 20 minutes before my shift ended. So I was already on edge. I pulled my car up to the front of my apartment and, being the friendly introvert I am, waved to the security guard who was looking directly at me and then went towards my front door. As I was moving through the big keyring to get my key out, my shoulder is grabbed and I'm violently turned around. Still haven't been able to settle down from the incident at work. I put the guy who grabbed me over the railing and on his head. He wasn't injured or anything. It took him a minute to get up though, as he went a full 180 in under a second. When I realized it was the security guard of the complex, I walked over and tried to help him up. He fired off at me. "You aren't allowed in the residence apartments. I'll have you fired for this." Now, I've seen this guy a few times when I went to check the mail, but he seemed not to recognize me. I can fully understand. I see 500 people walk in and out where I work, and I've never bothered learning names unless 1. I work with you every day. 2. You are a big shot who actually can fire me that instant. And 3. You cause trouble frequently. Needless to say, I can understand the lack of recognition. I don't work here. I live here. "BS!" he immediately responded once he got back on his feet. "I know our uniform. You're the new guy that's supposed to be relieving me." He grabbed my arm and tried to show me where the car was. "Remove your hand from my arm or I will remove it from yours." I was already done and looking at most at 6 hours of sleep, still in fight mode. I would have apologized later for this line, but spoilers. He's already on the radio calling in his supervisor to come deal with me. An hour later, the property manager is coming in to open the clubhouse. She stops, smiles, and waves and comes over. "Hi, didn't think you would be out at this time." The property manager and I were pretty cool with each other. I'm skilled enough to make most repairs myself and am never late with rent, and once I ran out to the pool to perform CPR for a resident. She also knew from the inspection yesterday that I was going to be pulling a messed up 12 on, 8 off, 12 on couple days. Before I can explain anything, the other guard butted in. "He was trying to go into a resident's apartment. I got my supervisor on the way. He won't be doing it again here." Ladies and gentlemen, I turned him upside down. The property manager, a nice sweet older lady, was about to turn this idiot inside out. Before she could say anything, the officer supervisor drove up and asked what was going on. She cut the officer off and told him, This fool is holding one of our residents hostage outside his apartment. I want him out of this complex 5 minutes ago, and he will not be coming back here ever." The supervisor just gave the officer a dismissive thumb-back motion. He had no leeway to argue. The contractee can always tell who's not allowed to go onto the site, even our own employees. Yeah, he was fired on the spot. And this is not the end, folks. Remember how I said we worked for the same company? The corporate big shots decided to rehire him and send him to the largest employer they guard and give him a second shot. He arrived for an interview at my facility where I had hiring power. The interview went all of 3 questions. 1. Are you going to keep anyone out that is supposed to be in here? 2. Are you going to ask for credentials for anyone you don't know trying to enter? 3. Are you going to grab anyone? He said no, and I accepted him to the facility. He's been working here a year now and is one of my best access control officers on site, even to the point someone claimed he let someone in that wasn't authorized, and I laughed instantly.
Huge shout out to It's Beth Marshwell, our newest channel member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really means the world to Reddit Boy and I. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.